where the hell's your lawsuit, Evan? Where did it go? Why aren't you like the first person up the steps at the courthouse filing this case that was so important to you that you went to the US Congress, you went to the California Congress to argue about how necessary this type of thing was? It just really, I think, shows the emptiness of the accusation that once she's actually handed the opportunity to bring it on a silver platter, what does she do? She disappears. She vanishes. She's got nothing to say now.
Okay, so here's my question. Just being very, very honest. I mean, you're always honest, but thinking very sort of realistically about Marilyn Manson's strategy, as I see it. Tell me if I'm wrong. There's two paths here. One, he can take this all the way to court and with the goal being that even if he doesn't end up quote unquote getting Evan, or he's not able to overturn, public opinion on his Me Too stuff, that he will still put her through as much legal pain, and I believe she deserves to go through pain because she's done horrible things and caused him pain, but he can make this as hard for her as possible and take it all the way through trial, air a bunch of dirty laundry, get this. I know it's probably not going to be televised and the media are going to misreport it, but at least get more of this shady stuff out there. He can do that, right? Or he can take it up to trial and then drop it along the way so it doesn't actually go to court. Which is better? And are those his two options with this?
Yeah, well, so his immediate option is going to be to appeal or not, but obviously if he's thinking about settling, then, the specific steps he takes beyond this point don't really matter. It's just such a tough call. Again, because this case was, as I see it, probably intended to be something of a vehicle for him to be able to assert his innocence of these accusations that were made against him, this collaboration to accuse him of sex crimes. Now that he can't do that, the lawsuit has really lost a lot of its value in that respect. And
is there a way he can do that? I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there a way he can do that tangentially? Like, I understand that the FBI letter could actually still come into this trial in some way, or is that wrong?
Well, theoretically, yes, because it all goes to the motivation, right? If you go to trial and you're arguing, look, these people are swatting me, hacking me, doing all these crazy things, the jury kind of naturally wants to understand, well, why would they do that? If they're trying to evaluate whether that happened or not. So motive evidence can be admissible, and to the extent this is the motive, they are, trying to harass him and advance their own careers and prominence and stuff like that on the back of these accusations, then it does seem like it's probably relevant to those other claims, at least to some extent. But the problem is, again, we've kind of already gotten a little bit of a tip from the judge in this ruling that, she's not necessarily inclined to see it that way. She sees it in terms of, why would you even have the anti-SLAPP if you can continue to bring these things up in court, do discovery on them and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily clear how that's going to resolve. There's always a lot of uncertainty in cases, and that's one of the big incentives to settle them in the first place. That way, at least what you're going to get. You aren't gambling on what the judge might or might not give you.
But you're talking about, I was thinking about, at some point along the way dropping this, but you said settle. I mean, you think Evan Rachel Wood is wanting to pay some money to Manson to make this go, or Illma to make this go away? Because they would be settling because he's bringing the cause of action, right?
Well, when I say settle, I don't know that we're necessarily talking about the same thing.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to involve a payment. It's just basically an agreement that we're going to walk.
I gotcha.
And just given the nature of the ruling, the attorney's fees, things like that are always potential bargaining chips that you can throw out there. Look, we walk away if, this, that, and the other. So I don't necessarily mean, Evan Rachel Wood would acknowledge wrongdoing or would, pay him a settlement or anything along those lines.
I gotcha.
I'm looking at it in terms of him voluntarily going away. One of the things that I wanted to mention before I forget, the problem that they have with the remaining claims and why those aren't necessarily going to be enough to achieve this goal of, vindicating himself on the sexual misconduct types of accusations is, I think, a lot like the problem you ran into that Johnny Depp ran into in his trial, where there's all this pushback about, proof that Amber Heard is the abuser, right? And this kind of crazy argument of, well, just because, she abused him doesn't mean he didn't also abuse her, and therefore the accusations are true, and that type of thing. It does kind of create a separate talking point that can help her in her defense, that like, look, just because I was, crazy upset and angry and whatever, distraught about the harm that I have suffered, so I did all this crazy stuff, it doesn't mean that those basic underlying things were wrong. I just handled it badly with how I reacted.
But wouldn't she have to prove that, though? If that was her defense in court, wouldn't she have to prove if those things actually happened?
I mean, if it's her defense in court, I think it's enough for her to prove simply that she believed that they happened.
Well, she's fucking crazy. So I mean, she's so
well,
that's our standout.
It's all comes down to what is the jury going to think. We've been watching this stuff in our context.
I'm going to kill myself over this case. I'm sorry. I have a concussion. Can I run to California and sue Marilyn Manson for that and be protected by anti-SLAPP? Oh my God. Okay. I'm sorry. Restate that.
And so, oh God, I don't even remember where
you're
I was
talking about being
going
crazy. I'm sorry. And I was asking, like, you're
it's going to come down to the jury's impression of her. The bottom line is her testimony is evidence. The weight that they decide to give it is entirely up to them. If she comes off like Amber Heard and nobody on the planet believes her, then yeah, it's going to be potentially an easy win for Manson. But that again is a gamble. Evan Rachel Wood is a much, much, much better actress than Amber Heard was, and you just never really know what any particular jury is going to think. You change the context from Fairfax to California and, Los Angeles and the implications of all that. So it's just a very risky thing for him to do.
And then the last question that people were asking, well, two questions. One, can they get a new judge somehow? And then two, people were saying, when will this end? Well, it's never going to really end. It's just going to kind of, hopefully, I have a feeling Manson has more up his sleeve in terms of PR stuff coming up and so forth. But I mean, I don't know if it's not ever going to end. It's just they're going to be sort of like climbing out of a hole. Like even, Johnny Depp was very lucky to get that. He had sort of this perfect scenario in a way where he had everyone in the world laser focused on his case for a several week period. And they got to hear all those crazy audios with Amber Heard and see her crying, but not crying and all. I mean, that was great, but Manson's just not going to get that. So I think it is going to be like it's a long, hard road out of hell. Mm-hmm. And he's moving out, but it's going to be more time. So, I don't really know. People say, when will this end? I don't know what that means. If you have an idea, you can let me know. But can they get another judge or nah?
I think it's probably too late at this point. Things do happen sometimes with judges, moving on, judges retiring, judges getting different positions, that type of thing. So, luck can strike and that type of thing can happen. Reason for the case to be reassigned can come up. But as far as them being able to disqualify the judge or look for another one, it's likely too late for that type of thing to happen.
Is Lance Ito still available? What's he up to?
Yeah, good question, right? He would get this on TV for us.
He would. We need Lance Ito. Oh my God. Well, you have any, thank you for joining us. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything I haven't asked you?
Well, I just, I would kind of underscore what you had to say about the long road out of hell, because litigation is always a long game, even under the best circumstances. And, I'm not like a big chess player or fan or anything like that, but I understand at least there are kind of stages to the game. You have your openings and you have your middle game and you have your end game and that type of thing. And there's all kinds of different things happening and different strategies you employ at different parts of the game. And so with a lawsuit, it's really very similar. And we're only just getting out of that that opening part. The opening hasn't necessarily gone that well for Manson, but it doesn't mean he doesn't still have plenty of things that he can bring in those later parts of the process. It's just, yeah, there's such a cost with a lawsuit in terms of your obviously expense. We're talking potentially years here, especially if this thing goes up on appeal. Assume that's going to add at least a year and maybe two, to however long it takes for this stuff to go forward. As we've seen, they set a trial date for like a year out from now. If it goes to appeal, that's going to get kicked down the road again as well. So we're not talking, resolution is right around the corner. There's a lot of financial cost. There's a lot of just personal cost of having to deal with this type of thing. Litigation isn't fun for anybody. I guess there are some lawyers that enjoy it, but a lot of them don't even like it themselves. It's just lucrative, so you do it.
Yeah.
But certainly for Manson, for Lindsay, for their family, for their fans, it's not fun for anybody. So
he's got, as you know, various lawsuits against him, percolating or at various stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, as if you were representing him, does he have to basically, like, I hated the Esme Bianco settlement. I hated it, but I understood what had to be done. I do feel like the field has gotten more balanced since then. Ashley Morgan Smith line recanted and some other stuff. And so I personally, I don't like the idea of him settling, but is this basically kind of where this is heading? Like, he's going to have to, is it just practically speaking, he's going to have to give these lying bitches some money?
I don't know if he's going to have to, but it won't surprise me if that happens. And I won't necessarily think that's a bad thing if it happens either. And a big reason for that is just because, again, there's only so much upside now that he really has by continuing to go down this road. To the extent that this is a two-front battle, part in the court, part in the court of public opinion, there's still a lot that he is getting for that court of public opinion that he can work with. One of the big factors that I think hasn't really been highlighted enough, in my opinion, is how California changed the law exactly the way that Evan Rachel Wood had been advocating for when she was complaining, I can't bring my case against Marilyn Manson. I have all this evidence. Back when she was advocating for the Phoenix Act and to extend the statute of limitations to be able to bring these types of claims. That is exactly what she was arguing needed to happen. And that's what was preventing her from being able to get her own justice. She formed an entire freaking foundation around this principle. So now she's gotten exactly what she wanted, like almost 2 years ago. Where the hell's your lawsuit, Evan? Where did it go? Why aren't you like the first person up the steps at the courthouse filing this case that was so important to you that you went to the U.S. Congress, you went to the California Congress to argue about how necessary this type of thing was? It just really, I think, shows the emptiness of the accusation that once she's actually handed the opportunity to bring it on a silver platter, what does she do? She disappears. She vanishes. She's got nothing to say now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if you wanted so badly to get the word out on this predator who's terrorizing women, and you're constantly ragging the LASD and the DA and the authorities for not doing anything, and you even went to the trouble to make a 2-part documentary, quote unquote, exposing this man. Yeah. Why wouldn't you file the lawsuit that you've been complaining for years and years that you couldn't file, and expose him, and let's walk it through court and let everybody see all the things that he did to you that you claim that he did to you.
And so showing the world that she wanted to litigate her claim by HBO, and not by the justice system, that's not something that he needs a lawsuit, to be able to prove. So he's got a lot to work with in the court of public opinion. He's got not a lot of upside left from going forward with this lawsuit. for those reasons, yeah, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if there is some type of voluntary resolution that keeps it from going all the way to trial. Again, like you, I think I'm not necessarily going to love that, but that's the reality of the justice system. It's trade-offs, it's risks, it's cost-benefit analysis. You got to pick your battles and focus on the ones that you can win. It's getting increasingly difficult for him to get a good win out of the lawsuit. It might just be more appropriate for him to turn his attention more back to the court of public opinion.